Imagine a group of criminals targeting the child of an ex-CIA operative, completely oblivious to the fact they'd just sealed their own fate. This tells the tale of Jim, a veteran who dedicated 3 decades to working in the shadows for the CIA, throughout Latin America, the Middle East, and ultimately in the dangerous drug war spanning the U.S.-Mexico frontier. Half a dozen years earlier, his spouse perished in an automobile crash, prompting Jim to abandon his former life entirely. He sought something genuine and pure amid a chaotic world, discovering it through parenting his daughter Lily, who was merely 7 when tragedy struck. At 13 now, Lily perfectly mirrored her late mother's appearance: dotted cheeks, reddish-brown, ringlets, and a rebellious nature that simultaneously delighted and worried her father. Their time in Clearbrook had lasted just 6 months. Living in a humble white farmhouse, featuring a crimson barn, 2 canines, and sufficient acreage to make their world feel intimately small. Jim filled his days assisting local builder Ed Simmons with renovating older homes. He presented himself to neighbors as a retired customs official. Nobody pressed for details. That's small-town etiquette. You respect boundaries and earn confidence gradually. However, not everyone in Clearbrook followed these unwritten rules. The trouble started simply enough. Lily encountered problems at school with the offspring of Darren Cole, publicly known as an auto mechanic, but actually leading a minor criminal organization distributing methamphetamine from a deserted gas station near Route 41. The child, Mason, had pushed Lily during playground time. Her response was punching him directly in the nose. Jim received a call the following day. Principal Mrs. Landers attempted diplomacy, though her allegiances were obvious. Everyone understood that Darren Cole's gang commanded fear throughout Clearbrook. Jim sat quietly while Mason's mother Tara ranted about violence, intimidation, and how these unwelcome newcomers were damaging her son's standing. He remained mostly silent, simply acknowledging Mrs. Landers before escorting Lily home. That evening, he prepared grilled cheese with tomato soup, then demonstrated how to treat a fractured nose using a carrot and spoon. She laughed, though concern flickered in her gaze. "Was I wrong, Dad?" "Absolutely not, sweetheart," he replied, smoothing a curl away from her face. "You simply showed them you refuse to be a target. That frightens people like the Coles." He kept his own fears private, the realization that his skills remained sharp, that part of him still yearned for the clarity found in conflict. 3 days passed before someone punctured his pickup's tires. A deceased squirrel appeared nailed to his entrance with a knife. Lily's school bag was discovered shredded behind the gymnasium. Jim avoided contacting Sheriff Wallace. He'd already assessed the man as having strong handshakes, but weak resolve, someone indebted to Darren Cole beyond admission. Instead, Jim toured the town, visiting the restaurant, postal service, and ultimately June McCready's corner market. She'd spent her entire existence in Clearbrook. "You understand who's responsible?" she inquired without glancing up from her paperwork. Jim confirmed with a nod. "You grasp their capabilities?" Another nod. "Planning to wait until they escalate further?" she asked, finally meeting his eyes. "No, ma'am." That night, Jim opened the military footlocker in the barn that had remained untouched for 5 years. Inside lay carefully maintained firearms, coded data storage devices, and a single photograph from Kabul showing his unit. Most members either deceased or vanished like himself. He selected a .45 caliber pistol and compact radio headset. Not from homicidal intent, but because certain evil only comprehends the dialect of intimidation. The next morning, Lily stayed home from school. They spent time angling at Boone Lake instead, discussing literature, her scientific assignment, and whether their new puppy deserved the name Bandit or Rocket. Jim absorbed every word, storing each memory carefully in case this represented their final tranquil day together. By evening's return, their front entrance stood partially open. He instructed Lily to remain in the vehicle. The interior revealed complete destruction: opened cabinets, extracted drawers. Red spray paint on the living room wall delivered a chilling message. "Next time we take her." Jim shut the door softly behind him. His pulse remained controlled and steady. Rather than anger, he felt awakened. Lily spent that night with Ed Simmons and his spouse across town. Jim contacted a memorized number, Ramos, a former agency colleague now handling digital forensics in Washington. "I require background information," Jim stated. Subject: Darren Cole, Tennessee-based, possibly connected to larger networks. Ramos hesitated. "Going fishing again, Beckett?" "Not yet. Simply collecting bait." By midnight, Ramos delivered the intelligence. Cole operated on a small scale, but his Kentucky cousin managed a supply chain connecting directly to a cartel officer from Reynosa. This protection also created vulnerability. Within hours, Jim identified Logan Crane, a middle management problem solver working for the cartel, known for occasional freelance assignments when local groups required muscle or connections. Crane operated from Chattanooga, and Jim didn't delay. He left Lily with Ed and his wife again, providing strict guidelines and an untraceable phone. "If my call doesn't come by sunrise," he told Ed, "evacuate her. Drive to my cousin in Asheville. Don't hesitate. Don't question." During the nighttime drive, Jim mentally rehearsed every possibility. His CIA background hadn't transformed him into a killer. It had made him a scholar of behavioral patterns, psychology, and vulnerabilities. Arriving at Crane's regular tavern, near midnight, he ordered coffee at the bar and waited patiently. When Crane eventually entered with his typical arrogance and volume, Jim approached like a long-time acquaintance. "Logan," he said. Crane turned with a prepared smirk that vanished upon seeing Jim's expression. Emotionless, unwavering, completely concentrated. Crane stepped backward slightly. "Do we know each other?" "No. But you understand my former profession." Jim displayed Lily's photograph, carefully folded and sweat-stained. "This child vanishes. You won't witness another dawn. Darren Cole approaches her again. I'll incinerate everything he's constructed. Clear?" Crane laughed nervously, attempting to maintain his tough facade. "You believe intimidation affects me?" Jim leaned closer, speaking quietly, but definitively. "No, but consequences do." Exiting that establishment, Crane understood the power dynamics had shifted. For years, Clearbrook belonged to men like Darren Cole. Not anymore. Not with someone like Jim Beckett in residence. Jim drove homeward through morning mist. The road stretched empty, the horizon gradually brightening with blue and gold hues. At the farmhouse, Lily waited on the porch, arms folded, eyes mixing, relief with defiance. "I'm staying put," she declared, "even if situations worsen." Jim knelt before her, fighting tears. "You represent my entire universe, Lily, but protecting you remains my responsibility." She didn't argue, simply embracing him. Later that day, Darren Cole committed his final error. He dispatched 2 men to intimidate the newcomer, as he termed it. They hadn't anticipated a trap. Jim had installed silent warning systems around the property perimeter. When they broke in, he didn't resort to firearms. He weaponized fear itself. One intruder was restrained and abandoned at the sheriff's station with recorded evidence of their conversation. The other received photos of the drug operation with exact locations which were mailed to Crane. Crane didn't hesitate. He severed his connection to Darren immediately, advising the cartel to abandon Clearbrook. The risk wasn't worthwhile. Jim expected no gratitude from Sheriff Wallace. He didn't desire it, only peace. But peace carried a cost, sometimes payable, only through silence and shadows. That night, he observed Lily sleeping, her gentle breathing providing stability. Outside, wind stirred the pine trees again. Jim Beckett recognized this wasn't finished, but quiet had returned for now. The following days flowed like water through cupped palms, steady and slow, yet constantly slipping away. Jim understood better than to completely relax. Though Clearbrook's tranquility returned like fog lifting after storms, Darren Cole had vanished. His workshop closed. His name became past tense whispers. Nobody knew his destination. Some claimed he fled to Kentucky. Others muttered about cartel revenge. Jim remained indifferent. The threat to Lily had disappeared, or at least been pushed, far enough for breathing room. but breathing didn't equal forgetting. One crisp morning, frost touching window edges, Lily brought the newspaper inside. The front page featured a story about a mysterious fire at a suspected methamphetamine facility 2 counties away. Jim sipped coffee, scanning the article without reaction, though knowing recognition flickered behind his eyes. Lily asked no questions. He offered no explanations. Some truths were better left unspoken. By spring's arrival across Tennessee hills, normalcy began returning. Jim accepted additional projects with Ed, even helping reconstruct a lightning-struck church steeple. Lily joined the school track team and spent weekends at the library, absorbed in marine biology books. They attended the town festival, purchased fudge from the bakery, and adopted a second dog. Even during peaceful times, Jim remained alert. He noticed out-of-state license plates lingering too long near the gas station. He monitored the sheriff's emotional fluctuations, sensing when unfamiliar names appeared in diner conversations. Patterns existed everywhere, always. One evening, while grilling burgers in the backyard, Lily asked, "Do you miss your old life?" Jim prodded the coals, selecting his words carefully. "I miss understanding my purpose. Clearly, but not what that life demanded." She nodded, contemplating quietly. "Think they'll return?" Jim gazed across the yard where fireflies began their evening dance. Not the same individuals, but someone always believes they're beyond consequences. Lily, now mature beyond her years, voiced his thoughts. "Then we'll stay prepared." That night he secured everything as usual: doors, windows, the rear gate. But he also left Lily's bedroom door slightly ajar to hear her breathing. In an uncertain world, that sound had become his foundation. 3 weeks later, on a humid Thursday, the ultimate test arrived. Jim was returning from the lumber supplier when he spotted the black SUV following him, a newer model, out of place on Clearbrook's dusty back roads. He made 3 unnecessary turns through town. Each time the SUV maintained a 2-car distance. He avoided going home, instead driving to the old quarry, an isolated location with single access. There he stopped, exited, and waited. The SUV approached but didn't halt. It idled briefly, then reversed and vanished down the road. Jim didn't pursue. Instead, he walked to the cliff edge and stared into the motionless water below. This wasn't completely finished. Returning home, he checked security cameras. Nothing unusual appeared. But during their evening movie, Jim's phone buzzed with a message. No number, just 3 words. "You were warned." His instincts activated immediately. Without panic, he moved systematically. He inspected the perimeter, double-checked locks, activated the secondary alarm system installed beneath the floorboards. He didn't inform Lily. Not yet. But he recognized another shift had occurred. At 2 a.m., the second message arrived. "She's not safe with you." Jim sat at the kitchen table, heart calm but eyes burning. He opened Ramos's encrypted files from months earlier, examining every name, every connection to Darren Cole's network, every whispered association. One name emerged: Vincent Rohr, a former DEA agent turned cartel fixer operating from Atlanta. Quiet, merciless, known for eliminating loose ends. Jim had encountered Rohr years earlier in a failed Juarez operation. Rohr had disappeared afterward, presumed dead. Obviously, he wasn't. At dawn, Jim contacted Ramos. "It's Rohr. He's cleaning up Cole's mess. I need his location." Ramos hesitated. "If you pursue him, there's no return." Jim's voice was gravel. "I never left." Within hours, Jim traveled to Atlanta. He left Lily a note, simple and direct. "Be good, be strong. I'll return soon. I promise." He left her with Ed again, this time with an emergency bag, untraceable phone, and sealed instructions, marked only if. In Atlanta, Jim parked 2 blocks from the luxury condominium where Rohr operated. He observed for hours, patient as stone. When Rohr finally emerged with 2 bodyguards, Jim followed at distance. Roar led them to an industrial park warehouse, the kind where silence was purchased and blood was washed down drains. That night, under darkness cover, Jim infiltrated the building. He moved like a phantom, silent and calculating. Inside, he discovered files, photographs, voice recordings proving Roar was establishing a new operation with Clearbrook as an expansion testing ground. Worse, he found a folder labeled Beckett. Inside were surveillance photographs of Lily, school, timetables, farmhouse blueprints. Jim didn't explode with rage. He documented everything, planted explosive devices in 4 strategic locations, and exited without sound. By sunrise, the building was gone. A controlled detonation, fire-consuming. Every evidence fragment. Roar survived, barely. He'd been away meeting Colombian contacts, but the message was received. The next day, an anonymous tip directed FBI agents to one of Roar's shell corporations. His empire began crumbling internally. Jim returned home just before sunset. Lily sat on the porch swing holding his note. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his chest, whispering, "I knew you'd come back." Jim held her tighter than ever before. In following weeks, no strange vehicles appeared. No messages came. Sheriff Wallace even visited with a pie, an awkward peace offering, and quiet acknowledgement that sometimes justice wore different badges. Summer arrived, then autumn, and days became slow again, peaceful. One evening, as the sky turned orange, behind the barn, Lily sat beside Jim on the porch and said, "I think I want to be like you." He looked at her, the girl who had witnessed too much yet remained whole. "No," he said softly. "Be better than me. Be strong, but stay kind. That's your power," she smiled. "Okay, but I'm still learning proper punching technique." He laughed, tears forming in his eyes. In that moment, in that light, everything felt exactly right, and for the first time in a very long time, Jim Beckett allowed himself to believe they might just be okay. When everything had passed, when gunfire echoes faded into distant memory, and violence traces quietly dissolved into Clearbrook's peaceful rhythm, what remained for Jim Beckett wasn't triumph, but understanding, both simple and profound. True strength doesn't reside in defeating enemies, but in the determination to protect what matters through love and compassion. Jim had once been a celebrated CIA operative, a ghost walking through covert operations' blood-stained hallways. But in that small house with its weathered porch and wild back garden, he had become something far more lasting. A father courageous enough to emerge from shadows, to abandon the past and cultivate a future for his daughter. This story isn't merely about Jim protecting Lily from danger. It's also about his own journey back to himself, not as the soldier who once understood warfare's art, but as a man learning to live fully in quiet, everyday moments. The lesson it leaves behind is this: sometimes the most courageous act isn't confrontation, but the patience to rebuild, brick by brick, a life worth living. For those who have lived many seasons, weathered heartbreak, loss, and change, Jim and Lily's story offers a gentle reminder. Life may be unfair, even cruel, but we always have a choice in our response. It's in how we treat those we love, how we guard safety and hope for the next generation, that creates the legacy that truly endures.